right. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. We have first up, thank you guys for all joining today. I know it's a nicer day this spring, so I appreciate you guys hopping on the call. Looking forward to seeing a lot of you guys this spring. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Zach Zerbo. I am our Junior Tour Director here at the Philadelphia PGA section. Joining us today is Ben Debsky and Mark Monahan. We're going to talk a little bit about the rules of golf, kind of dive into some of the rules that, players experience, often in tournament play. So really hoping that you guys can take something from this. We're going to go through some slides, just talking about some of the rules. Towards the end, we'll talk a little bit more about some of our resources that we have on our website and for you guys. So we'll get right into it here. So first off, we're going to welcome our presenters. So yeah, like I said, we have Ben and Mark, both PGA members. So we'll have you guys give a quick introduction just so everyone knows kind of who's presenting. So we'll start with you, Ben.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to hop on the call. And like Zach said, hopefully you've had an opportunity to get out and play some golf this spring. Looking forward to a great season and glad to be on tonight. I'm the head golf professional at the Springhaven Club in Wallingford. And I've been here for the past 12 years. This is my 13th season. I'm also a member of the National Rules Committee. And, like I said, just happy to be here. And hopefully you can take a few pointers away and good luck this year with everything.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see a nice turnout for this evening's rules. I am retired. I was at Paul Pack Hills Golf Club for 30 years, and I've spent about the past 10 years working on the field staff as a rules official at many of the junior tour events and our pro events. So some of you may have seen me out on the golf course, and hopefully maybe I was able to help you save some shots somewhere down the road. So we're looking forward to the rest of the evening here.
All right, sweet. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ben. So yeah, just make sure you guys remain on mute. If you guys do have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type them in the chat, and I can kind of chime in and ask Mark and Ben a little bit more about it. We will have a Q&A, so kind of open questions at the end of the presentation. So if there's anything specific that you don't want to type in the chat, you want to ask, we will have that at the end of the presentation. But we will go ahead and get right into it here.
All right, so I think this one's me, Mark. So yeah, I guess just to kick things off here, obviously it's important to know the different areas of the course, and this falls under Rule 2. So if you're following along in your rule book, this is the second rule in the book, and basically this is an important rule. While there's no penalty statements within this rule, obviously it's important to know where your ball lies so that you know how to proceed if a rule situation would happen to come up. So generally speaking, there's 4 specific areas to the course, and these would include the teeing area of the hole being played, penalty areas, which Mark's going to cover later in the presentation, which are red and yellow in color. We have bunkers, which I'll cover later in the presentation, and then we have the putting green of the hole being played. So those are the 4 specific areas of the course. Everything else would include the general area, and most of our shots are going to be played from the general area. That would include areas like the fairway, the rough, wrong greens, as well as tee boxes of the hole you're playing or other holes. Those would all be considered the general area. There are times where your ball might end up in 2 areas of the course. So you might have a ball that's in the general area and a specific area of the course. And in those situations, the ball is going to be treated as being in the specific area. So if you've got a ball that's in the rough, in the general area, that's also in the penalty area, your ball is going to be considered in the penalty area. There are also times where you may have situations where your ball's in 2 specific areas of the course, where it might be in a penalty area and a bunker. And in those cases, you're going to follow this order. You're going to go penalty area, bunker, and then putting green. So if your ball's in a penalty area and a bunker, you're going to treat it as being in a penalty area. if it's in a bunker and on the putting green, you're going to treat it as being in the bunker. So, like I said, well, there's not a whole lot going on in this rule. It's a really short rule. It is important that you know where your ball lies and how to proceed when you've got some of those unique situations where it might be in two different areas of the course.
Okay, next we have wrong place. So real quickly, we need to define what a wrong place is, and it's any area of the golf course other than the place where the player is required or allowed to play from. So I got to throw my glasses on here, guys. A player must make each stroke from where their ball comes to rest, except when the rules require or allow the player to play, which is basically what the definition was I just described. A player must not play their ball in play from a wrong place. So once that ball's in play, you don't want to be hitting it from the wrong place. And I'll give you a really good example. When you're on the putting green and your fellow competitor or someone you're playing with asks you to move your ball over because you're on their line, and so you move your mark over out of the way and then you forget to put it back. Now you've played from a wrong place. So how to complete a hole after playing from the wrong place in stroke play. Player must decide whether to play out the hole with ball played from the wrong place or to correct the mistake by playing from the right place. What a player does next depends on whether it was a serious breach. That is, whether the player could have gained a significant advantage by playing from a wrong place. When it's not a serious breach, the player must play out the hole with the ball played from the wrong place without correcting the mistake, and they're going to receive a 2-stroke penalty. If it is a serious breach, I'll give you an example of a serious breach. Let's say there's a penalty area that's right in front of a green, and as your approach shot goes into the penalty area, and that player, instead of dropping on the fairway side of the penalty area, goes across and plays from the green side as if they've already cleared. Well, that's a serious breach. That's helping them a lot. If you're what I was just talking about before on the putting green, if you just didn't move your coin over, you're only putting from what, maybe 4 inches away. So that is not a serious breach. All right, so remember, the player must correct it if it was a serious breach. If the player does not correct the mistake before making a stroke to begin another hole, or for the final hole of the round before returning their scorecard, the player is disqualified. So that's a biggie. You want to make sure that you avoid that. We hate DQing anyone. So remember, penalty for playing from a wrong place is a general penalty. In match play, it's real easy. Once you do it, doesn't matter if it was serious or not, because as soon as you did it in match play, you just lost the hole. Stroke play, 2 strokes. Okay.
All right. So wrong ball here, another important term. And this falls under Rule 6.3C if you're following along in your rule book. And basically, player must not make a stroke at a wrong ball. You know, it's one of those things. I think you do it once and then you hopefully never do it again. You know, the rules say that you should put an identifying mark on your ball. And this is a good reason to do so. That, you know, when you are identifying your ball, when you're in play, that, you know, having a mark on there makes it a lot easier. So in stroke play, the player gets the general penalty, which is 2 strokes. And the key here is that you must correct the mistake by continuing play with the original ball, by playing it as it lies, or taking relief under the rule. The strokes or stroke made with the wrong ball before the mistake is corrected do not count. So if you play the wrong ball, You hit a ball down the left-hand side, you find a ball that you think is yours, you hit it up towards the green, and you discover that it is the wrong ball. You need to go back and play the correct ball or find the correct ball. And then any strokes that you've made with the wrong ball do not count towards your score. If the player does not correct the mistake before making a stroke to begin another hole, or for the final hole of the round before returning their scorecard, again, we've got a big problem here. The player is going to be disqualified. So if you notice that you have played a wrong ball, the timing is key that you correct the mistake, but it's also key that you do so in a timely manner before you tee off on the next hole, or in the case of the final hole, before returning the scorecard. And then the part 2 of this rule is what to do if a player's ball or your ball was played by another player as a wrong ball. So if it was known or virtually certain that the player's ball was played by another player as a wrong ball, the player must replace the original ball or another ball on the original spot, which is not known, must be estimated. And this applies whether or not the original ball has been found. So a couple key terms there. Known or virtually certain is a big one in the rules. That basically means that you're 95% certain that what you think occurred actually did occur. So if you hit your drive on hole number 1 to an adjacent hole, basically you need to see another player hit what you believe is your ball to assume that they did in fact play your ball as a wrong ball. And if you have that known or virtual certainty, then you're going to either replace the original ball, or you can use another ball and place it on the original spot. If you don't know that original spot, you're going to estimate.
Next, we have nearest point of complete relief. This is the reference point for taking free relief from an abnormal course condition, dangerous animal condition, wrong green, no play zone, or in taking release from under certain local rules. It is the estimated point where the ball would lie that is nearest to the ball's original spot, but not near the hole in that spot, in the required area of the course. And those are those areas that Ben had told you about, and where there's no interference from the condition from which relief is being taken for the stroke the player would have made from the original spot if the condition were not there. So let's use a cart path as an example, because it's probably the most that we use during any round of golf. It's usually always in play somewhere. And so if you're taking relief from that cart path, you go to your nearest point of relief, and it could be, you don't know which side that's going to be on, depending on where the ball lies on the cart path. And to determine that spot, take the club that you would intend to play if that cart path wasn't there, take your stance on each side, and whichever one is closer to where that ball lied, that's your nearest point, and then you're going to drop your ball within 1 club length. Now, one comment I'll make to you, you're getting relief from the obstruction, but you're not necessarily going to have a great shot or a nice lie. So my comment would be, I would not pick that ball up right away until you make sure that where you're going to drop is where you would like to play from, because you can play the ball as it lies. You may decide to play it off the cart path. Your nearest point of relief could be where your swing is going to be in a bush. The ball could be almost in a bush. Could line you up behind trees and you have no shot. So I'd be cautious, because if you lift that ball and decide you do not want to take relief, it's going to cost you a stroke for lifting a ball in play. Okay.
Good point. Good point, Mark. So this is the relief area. This is a defined term in the definitions part of the book. And this is the area where a player must drop a ball when taking relief under a rule, with the exception of back on the line relief. And these are the rules that would include back on the line relief. Each relief rule requires the player to use a specific relief area whose size and location are based on these 3 factors. And so the reference point is 1, and that's the point from which the size of the relief area is measured. And Mark just talked about the nearest point of complete relief, but this reference point might also be the point where the ball last crossed the edge of a penalty area, or if you're taking unplayable ball relief, it may actually be where the ball lies. So that reference point is going to depend on which rule you are applying. The size of the relief area is measured from the reference point, and that's going to be either 1 club length or 2 club lengths from the reference point. 1 club length for free relief, as Mark referenced there, for a cart path situation or an abnormal course condition, or 2 club lengths in a penalty situation. Maybe we were taking lateral relief from a red penalty area. And then there's some limits on the location of the relief area, and it may be limited in 1 or more ways. So it's only in a certain defined areas of the course, such as the general area, or not in a bunker or a penalty area. So we'll talk about embedded ball relief later, but that rule is specific that the relief area be in the general area. Also, it's not nearer the hole than the reference point, or must be outside a penalty area or a bunker from which relief is being taken, or it is where there's no interference from the condition from which relief is being taken. So Mark just talked about the cart path relief there. That relief area has to be in an area where there is no interference from that cart path. If you decide to take relief, that relief area is going to give you full relief from the condition. And then when taking relief, the ball must be dropped from knee height and must come to rest within the relief area. So the player in the little picture there is dropping from knee height, and you can see that the ball landed in the relief area and then stayed in the relief area. So those are requirements of a good drop. If this player's ball were to roll outside of that relief area or roll closer to the hole than the reference point, the player would then re-drop a second time. And if it was a good drop for a second time and the ball rolled out of the relief area, then that player would have the ability or would be required to place the ball where the ball first landed in the relief area.
Next, we have movable obstructions and immovable obstructions. Movable is an obstruction that can be moved with reasonable effort and without damaging the obstruction or the course. Examples would be rakes, ball markers, soda cans, etc. All of you kids are probably too young to ever remember seeing this, but years ago, Tiger Woods at the Phoenix Open, was behind this huge rock that was located in the rough to the side of one of the fairways. And Tiger got a bunch of the patrons, the fans came over and moved this big rock out of the way, and it gave Tiger a free shot at the green. So after that happened, it was within the rules of what he did. But the next time they played that golf course, all those big rocks were made integral parts of the course, so they were not allowed to move that anymore. But he was smart enough, they took advantage, and he ended up with a free good shot. So the relief from these is you may remove freely, even if it affects the ball lie, stance, or swing. If the ball moves while removing the obstruction, no penalty, replace it on the original spot. And notice relief is always free. There's no penalty. An immovable obstruction is any obstruction that cannot be moved without unreasonable effort or without damaging the obstruction or the course, and otherwise doesn't meet the definition of a movable obstruction. Could be the benches you see on golfers, sprinkler heads, cart paths. There's a slide on the workshop that the USGA has, and it's an outhouse, and the ball goes through the little moon shape in the outhouse door, and so the ball's in an immovable obstruction. It actually gets lost in there, and his relief from there is where it last crossed the line to go in the immovable obstruction, as long as it's known or virtually certain that it was there. So you take free relief at nearest point of complete relief, again, no closer to the hole, only if the instruction interferes with lie, stance, or swing. You do not get line of sight relief. I had one of our pro events, one of the pros argued with me because he wanted free relief from an irrigation box that's on the course because it was in his line of play. Well, didn't interfere with the lie, stance, or swing, so he had to play it as it lies.
All right. Does somebody have a question, Zach, or how do you want to? I'm not sure if that's a question.
Yeah. Yeah, someone raised their hand. Feel free to type in the chat if you can. That would be great.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to move on to bunkers here, and one of the specific areas of the course as reference here. This is Rule 12, and one of the big pieces here is to know when a ball is in the bunker. So the diagram on the right there, 12.1, gives us a good idea of when the ball is in the bunker. And the rule says a ball is in the bunker when any part of the ball touches sand on the ground inside the edge of the bunker, or is inside the edge of the bunker and rests on ground where sand normally would be, or in or on a loose impediment, movable obstruction, abnormal course condition, or integral object that touches sand in the bunker, or is on ground where sand would normally be. So if you're following along there, you can see that we've got a ball that is blatantly in the middle of the sand in the bunker. That's going to be in the bunker. Then we also have a ball that's on a movable obstruction, which Mark just talked about, is a rake. So that ball is going to be considered in the bunker. To proceed there, you would be able to move the rake and then replace the ball in the bunker without penalty. And then we have two balls that are not in the bunker. So even though there's that little plot of grass in the middle of the bunker, that ball is not considered in the bunker. And then we have a ball that looks like it's kind of buried or embedded in the wall or face, and that ball would not be in the bunker either. Keep in mind, when you're in the bunker, you are able to remove loose impediments and movable obstructions. We just talked about that you could move that rake without penalty, but you could move things like leaves and twigs and even stones that are in the bunker. You just have to be careful when removing loose impediments not to move the ball. If you remove a loose impediment and you end up moving the ball, you're going to be in a penalty situation. If you do move the movable obstruction, as Mark said, and the ball moves, you would be able to replace the ball. And then the second slide will touch a little bit on testing the conditions and the penalty phases here. Okay, so before playing a shot, when touching sand in a bunker results in a penalty. So you're going into the bunker, and before you play the shot, deliberately touching sand in the bunker with a hand, club, rake, or other object to test the condition of the sand is going to be a penalty. You can't deliberately test the sand, touch the sand to test the condition of it. And that would include, rubbing it with your hand, or kind of, moving your rake, the club through the sand, or raking a part of the bunker to test the condition. That's going to be room for a penalty. And then you also, before playing the shot, cannot touch sand in the bunker with a club in the area right in front of or right behind the ball in making a practice swing or in making the backswing for a stroke. So keep in mind when you're going into the bunker, you have to be careful. There's some more leeway that's been provided over the years, but you still have to be careful that you're not testing the condition of the sand or touching kind of these protected areas that we just talked about. There are some times when you can touch the sand and it would not result in a penalty. I think a lot of us go in there and we dig in with our feet to take our stance. That's no problem. Smoothing the bunker to care for the course is permitted. Placing clubs, equipment, or other objects in the bunker is also allowed. If you are applying a rule, let's say you're taking an unplayable or temporary water relief in the bunker, and you need to measure, mark, lift, replace, or take other actions under a rule, if you touch the sand while you're doing that, you're not going to be penalized. And you're permitted to lean on a club to rest, stay balanced, or prevent a fall as well. And then lastly, you're also allowed to strike the sand in frustration or anger. The key note here at the bottom is that says, but the player gets the general penalty, again, 2 strokes in stroke play or loss of hole in match play, if their actions in touching the sand improve the conditions affecting the stroke. And so there's these 5 areas that we have to be careful, even if we do touch the sand. If they improve our conditions, we're going to end up being penalized. So that would include the lie of the ball, our area of intended stance, our area of intended swing, our potential relief area, or the line of play. So you have to be careful what you're doing in the sand, even though you have a little bit more leeway.
The question we had was, if a player moves a stick near the ball and the ball moves, is it not a penalty stroke, or would the player be allowed to replace to the original location? I believe with a stick, Ben and Mark, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but a stick would not be a movable obstruction. That would be considered a loose impediment. So if somebody moved a stick, then they moved their ball, they'd have to replace that ball, and they would be getting 1 penalty stroke. Ben or Mark, does that sound correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, and then if they were to not replace that ball, they would be playing from a wrong place, and they would get the worst of the penalties. So they'd just get 2 penalty strokes, a general penalty for that.
That's the case where some of the real young kids to tell their math teacher 2 + 1 isn't always 3. Sometimes it's 2.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. But yeah, as far as a stick goes, yeah, it's not considered a movable obstruction. So that's just a loose impediment, kind of same thing as a twig or a rock if you were to move it around your ball. All right, we'll move on here. I'm talking about the putting green.
Putting green. This has changed drastically over the years, so we'll go through it. The putting green, marking, lifting, and cleaning a ball on the putting green is all permitted. That's the one place on the golf course you can always mark and lift that ball. Anywhere else, it's got to be for a special reason. Improvements allowed on the putting green. You're allowed to remove sand and loose soil. You can repair damage. And by damage, we're talking about animal footprints. You'll see, especially up here where I live in the Poconos, a lot of acorn damage on some of the greens. And before, a mower would run over an acorn, push it into the ground, and you weren't allowed to touch it. But now you can pop that acorn out, repair it. Keep in mind, you can also fix spike marks, although none of us wear really metal spikes anymore, but still do some damage. And the one thing that is not damage is an air fire hole and verticut lines. There's any practice that a maintenance worker possibly may do to the course. What to do when a ball or marker moves and relief from a wrong green. Is there another screen beyond this? Nope.
This is all we had. If you could just elaborate a little bit on it real quick.
So when a ball or the marker moves, that used to be, you used to get penalized for that, and now it's going to, there's no penalty for accidentally moving a ball on the putting green. However, what caused the ball to move is going to determine where that ball is going to get played from. If you accidentally bump it, kick it with your foot or whatever, and the ball moves, let's say a foot, you're going to replace that ball. If the wind blew the ball and caused it to move, or a natural occurrence caused that ball to move, now you're going to play it from where it lies. Except If you had already marked and lifted that ball and then put it back, now you own that spot. So no matter what causes the ball to move, you're going to put it back on that spot where it was. So on a really windy day, I would highly recommend that you always go up and mark that ball, no matter how close or distance it is from the hole, and lift it. And then, because then when you replace it, that wind happens to blow it 30 feet away or into a penalty area or something, you get to place it back where it was, because now you own that spot. I hope everyone understands that. I think it's pretty simple. On a wrong putting green, you must take relief from a wrong putting green. You'll be playing from a wrong place if you don't, and it's 100% relief. I think we can all understand that. The superintendents don't want to see somebody hitting an iron off of the third green when they're playing the fourth hole and taking a big divot and ruining the putting surfaces. So wrong putting greens is absolutely must take relief. Nearest point of relief, no closer to the hole.
Yep. And wrong greens, yeah. So they're essentially any green that is not the hole that you are playing would be considered a wrong green. So if you were to hit your ball onto another hole onto the green, you're not going to play your ball from that spot. You would find the nearest point of complete relief like we talked about earlier, and then you would proceed from there.
That is correct.
Okay.
Out of bounds.
Out of bounds. Okay. So we've got something happened there, Zach. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
not sure. Someone took over. Sorry about that.
All right. So this is rule 18. This is ball lost or out of bounds, and then also we're going to talk a little bit about how to play a provisional ball. And out of bounds, there's lots of different ways that you see on the golf course that out of bounds is defined. You might see white stakes, which is very typical. You might have lines on the ground. Boundary fences certainly are common. Property edges and roads. I was thinking about my course, Springhaven, and how many different uses or different ways we define out of bounds here. We use stakes. We definitely use lines. We've got boundary fences and property edges. I don't think we actually use a road as a defining a way to define out of bounds. But so you just have to be aware of these things. Certainly your notice to players is gonna be helpful to know how out of bounds is defined. But just know that there are multiple ways that it can be defined. A ball is lost if not found within 3 minutes. And, that search time, that 3 minutes starts when you or your caddy arrive to start searching for the ball where you believe the ball is lost. So just keep that in mind. If you have a caddy, that if they're looking for the ball, that 3 minute clock starts the minute that they get to that area to start searching for the ball. Now, this little caveat here says players can use a reasonable amount of time to identify their ball if they are not certain it is theirs. So there may be, this is probably pretty rare, but there may be instances where, let's say you've hit a ball up into a pine tree, or you saw the ball kind of go towards the woods, and you get over to the area and you start searching for the ball. And let's say 2 minutes and 45 seconds have gone by, and you find a ball that you believe is yours. This basically says that if you can't identify the ball within those 3 minutes, that you're going to be given a reasonable amount of time, probably up to another minute, to identify that ball is or isn't yours. And if you find that it is not yours, then and that 3 minutes has expired, then your ball is going to be lost at that point. For balls that are lost or out of bounds, you must take stroke and distance relief. So you have to proceed under stroke and distance. You have to return to the spot where the previous stroke was made. And follow the relief procedure for stroke and distance. 1 stroke penalty. Stroke and distance is an option anywhere on the course. So regardless of where you are, you can always proceed under stroke and distance and return to the area where your previous stroke was made. And then once a player puts a ball in play under this rule, the original ball is no longer in play and must not be played. And this says true even if the ball is found within 3 minutes. So let's say you hit maybe it's a par 3 and you've hit your tee ball and there's some trees or out of bounds on the right hand side, and you've kind of sliced your tee shot over to the right, and you get up there and you've searched for about a minute. You say, man, there's no way that ball's in bounds, and you go back to the tee and you tee up another ball and you hit it, and then you're playing your fellow playing partners are up there and they say they found a ball and it was within the 3 minutes. Well, as long as you've put the ball in play off of the tee, even if that original ball was found in the 3 minutes, you're still proceeding under stroke and distance. So there's a couple different ways you can put a ball in play here. One is, like I said, if you're going back to re-tee and you actually hit the ball. Another way is if you're proceeding under stroke and distance, let's say not on a tee shot, as soon as you drop the ball and put it in play that way, that original ball is no longer an option for you. So that can get a little bit tricky, but the key there is if you do put another ball in play, the original ball is no longer in play, even if it's found in the allotted time. And then we're going to talk a little bit about provisional. So provisional, a lot of times we see it off the tee box, and this is, more or less a way to save some time. And this is allowed only when the player believes his original ball is lost outside a penalty area or is out of bounds. So you're playing a provisional that you think is lost outside of a penalty area or out of bounds. It is not allowed if the player thinks their ball is lost in a penalty area. So if you think your ball is in a penalty area and you're going to play a provisional, ultimately that ball is going to end up being your ball in play. So just keep in mind, you're only playing a provisional for a ball that is lost outside a penalty area or is out of bounds. And you must announce your provisional, and folks have to know that you're playing the provisional. So you have to announce it to someone, and you must use the word provisional or clearly indicate that you're playing a provisional ball. So there are some other acceptable words that you can use, but I think just to be safe, just use the word provisional. Turn to your the other players in your group and say, hey, I'm going to play a provisional ball for a ball that's lost outside the penalty area or might be out of bounds. It's not enough to simply just say, hey, I'm playing another ball or I'm playing again, because nobody's going to really know what you mean if you're saying that. So just keep it safe. If I'm in a tournament playing myself, I always just say the word provisional, and it just keeps it clean, and there's no questions about anything. And then this little note at the bottom here says that the provisional may be played again up until the point where the player believes their original ball may be lost. So as an example, let's say you hook your tee shot on a par 4, 250 yards off the tee into the woods on the left-hand side, and you say, hey, I'm going to hit a provisional, and to be safe, you decide you're going to hit an iron or a hybrid off the tee, and you hit that iron or hybrid 200 yards from the tee box, and your original ball is, you think, might be lost about 250 yards from the tee. So this statement, or the provisional ball rule, allows you to play your provisional up until the point where you believe your original is lost. If you play it beyond that point, now you're going to have a problem, and that ball is going to become the ball in play. But this rule lets you kind of play up the hole until you can go and search for your original ball. And then if it is lost, you can go and play the provisional. And if it isn't, then you've got the opportunity to play the original ball. And then this is a good diagram just explaining when a ball is in bounds and when a ball is out of bounds. and also how the boundary edges are defined. So on the left-hand side, we've got stakes that are defining the out of bounds. And when the boundary is defined by stakes, the edge is going to be the line on the course side points at ground level of those stakes. So in the rules, normally we carry a string, and we would string out against those stakes to have a line to help us determine whether a ball is inbounds or out of bounds. And you can clearly see we've got a ball on the course, and we've got a ball clearly out of bounds on the left-hand side. And then we've got a couple that are a little closer there. The ball that's on the line, or appears to be on the line, really is touching the course. And so that ball is going to be inbounds because part of it is touching the course, where the other ball is clearly beyond that line, and it would be out of bounds. The one on the right is a little bit different because now we're using a painted line on the ground. And again, we're going to use the inside edge or course edge of that line to define the boundary. And so using that same method there, we've got a ball that's touching the course fully, no problem. The ball that's kind of half on the line and half on the course is going to be considered inbounds because it's touching part of the course. Then we've got a ball clearly out of bounds, and then we've got one that's tough. It's right on the line, but you can clearly see that no part of that ball is touching the course, and it's beyond that defining edge, which makes it out of bounds.
Rules issues in stroke play. Playing two balls when uncertain what to do, which is under Rule 20.1C3. A player who is uncertain about the right procedure while playing a hole may complete the hole with two balls without penalty. The player must decide to play two balls after the uncertain situation arises and before making a stroke. So if you're not sure what you're going to do or need which ball you want to play from, or before making that decision, announce to your fellow competitors that you intend to play two golf balls. The player should choose which ball will count if the rules allow the procedure used for that ball by announcing that choice to their marker to another player before making a stroke. Now, I said should, so you don't have to, but we highly recommend that you should. If the player does not choose in time, the ball played first is treated as the ball chosen by default. When playing the two balls, the player must report the facts of the situation to the committee before returning the scorecard, even if the player scores the same with both balls. This penalty is severe. The player is disqualified if they fail to do so. There's many times when I've been on junior tour events and I get called over and a player has, say, 2 holes prior had played 2 golf balls, and they explain it to me and tell me what's going on. We give them the ruling, and at that point they have fulfilled the requirement of reporting it to the committee. So when you're in a situation like that, if you can't really decide what should happen, whether you get free relief from something or not, and you're playing the 2 balls, try to track down one of the rules officials that's on the course. If a player made a stroke before deciding to play a second ball, this rule does not apply at all, and the score that counts is the score with the ball played before the player decided to play the second ball. So once you've put a ball into play or played that first ball, you have no choice. You're not going to get to play 2 balls. But the player, during all this period, does not get any penalty for playing the second ball. And a second ball played under this rule is not the same as a provisional ball under Rule 18.3. I know when you guys play in our events, the junior tour events, they always tell you on the first tee that if you're having a problem and you can't track down a rules official to go ahead and play the 2 balls. So we encourage you to do that so that we can keep play moving. Keep in mind, this is only for stroke play. In match play, you do not get to play 2 golf balls. Okay.
All right. So we went over this one a little bit earlier, but so here's playing the wrong ball. In stroke play, the player gets the general penalty, must correct the mistake by continuing play with the original ball, by playing it as it lies, or taking relief under the rules. The stroke made with the wrong ball and any more strokes before the mistake is corrected, including strokes made and any additional penalty strokes solely from playing that ball, do not count. If the player does not correct the mistake before making a stroke to begin another hole, or for the final hole of the round before returning their scorecard, the player is disqualified. So just keep in mind, I think the big one there is this happens to everybody. Make sure that you put an identifying mark on your ball. And, when you find out that you played a wrong ball, just make sure that you correct it in time, which means before teeing off on the next hole or turning your scorecard for the final hole.
Starting play of a hole. If the player who is starting a hole plays the ball from outside the teeing area, including from a wrong set of tee markers for a different teeing location on the same hole or a different hole. In stroke play, the player gets the general penalty, 2 strokes, and must correct the mistake by playing a ball from inside the teeing area. The ball played from outside the teeing area is not in play. That stroke and any more strokes before the mistake is corrected, including strokes made and any penalty strokes solely from playing that ball, do not count. So if I'm supposed to be playing the white tees and I tee off from the reds and I proceed to hit that ball 3-4 more times, get up near the green, and somebody says, I think you hit the wrong tee markers. I must go back and correct that. And I have to correct it before I tee off on the next hole, or in the case of the last hole, before we return that scorecard. And the good news is all those shots I took don't count. The bad news is I'll be hitting 3 off the tee. So you could stand there and hit a ball out of bounds and in the penalty and rack up all kinds of stuff, and maybe you were lucky and hit from the wrong place, the wrong teeing ground, or out of the teeing area. So they just don't count. You don't see that happen too often. I think you guys need to, when you play our events, make sure you pay attention, because a lot of times the home courses tee markers are still on the golf course, and we hate to see you confuse them and end up getting disqualified for something like that. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Mark. All right. Abnormal course conditions. These are situations that you're going to run into on the course basically every time you play. I know Mark referenced the irrigation box and the cart paths already. Other abnormal course conditions would include animal holes, ground under repair, immovable obstructions he touched on, and then temporary water. And this is just a nice simple diagram explaining free relief from abnormal course condition in general area. So ground under repair here, we've got an area that's, looks like it's kind of burned out, or maybe an area where water was pooling, and then the grass kind of died. And so it's circled with white paint, which would identify this as ground under repair, which is an abnormal course condition. And in order to take relief, we talked about some of these things. We want to identify our reference point, which in this case is going to be the nearest point of complete relief. And then we're going to measure our relief area. And since it's free relief, we're going to have 1 club length in either direction, no closer to the hole. So you can see the club lengths going left and right there, and then kind of back behind that area. And then in the general area, this ball needs to be dropped in the general area. So this is a very nice diagram that gives you a good example of how to take free relief from an abnormal course condition. And then the player would drop in that relief area and the ball must stay in that relief area. And then you've proceeded correctly. Okay, so relief, Mark touched on nearest point of complete relief. There's also something called maximum point of available relief, which is, very uncommon. I don't think you run into it very often, but it's worth touching on. And the best example I can think of is in a situation where you've got a bunker that is basically flooded with temporary water, and your ball goes into the temporary water in that bunker, and you basically can't find a nearest point of complete relief in the bunker, which is what you would need to do for free relief, is find nearest point of complete relief in the bunker. And that's not available because the entire bunker is flooded. And so this maximum point of available relief would let you find another area within that bunker that gives you some relief, that maybe your ball is in shallower water than it was where it originally lay, or you might be standing in shallower water than where you were originally to play the shot where the ball had been. And so this maximum point of available relief just gives you somewhere to go within that bunker that still provides a free relief option. When you take relief in a bunker for an abnormal course condition, it's free relief as long as the ball stays in the bunker. If you need to proceed outside of the bunker for, in that case of temporary water, let's say you say, hey, there's no way I'm going to be able to play this ball out of this bunker. And you say, I have to take relief outside of the bunker. Maybe it's just a smarter move. Then you're going to be penalized. You're going to use back on the line relief in this situation. And it's going to be a 1-stroke penalty to come out of the bunker to take relief from an abnormal course condition. Relief on the putting green, maybe just sticking with the temporary water as an example. If your ball's on the putting green and you've got temporary water that interferes with your play, your relief area, your nearest point of relief may be on the putting green, but in this instance, your nearest point of complete relief might actually be in the general area. So when you're on the putting green, you have the ability to identify a nearest point of relief either on the putting green or in the general area. So that's a little bit unique from the other situations. And then embedded ball, which, again, you run into it, not super common, but it's important to know when a ball is embedded and then how to proceed and take relief. So on the right-hand side, you can see when a ball is embedded, it has to be below the level of the ground. And so you can see on those top two examples that certainly in that first example on the top, part of the ball is embedded in its own pitch mark, which is important, but it's below the level of the ground. The second example, there's some grass that's in between the ball and the dirt, but you can definitely clearly see there's an indentation that the ball is embedded below the level of the ground. So that would also be embedded as long as it's in its own pitch mark. And then the third example, you can see that the ball is not kind of dipped down below the level of the ground, and it's just sitting in long grass. It's sitting down in the long grass, but not actually embedded. And so just make sure a couple things there. It's got to be in its own pitch mark. It has to be embedded in the general area. So if you've got a ball plugged in a bunker, that wouldn't apply here. Or you've got a ball that's plugged in embedded in a penalty area, that would not apply here. It's got to be in the general area. And then I think Mark talked about no relief if it's clearly unreasonable to play the ball as it lies. So I was in a situation last year at Rolling Green, and one of the players that I was with hit his ball in between two roots that was right up against the trunk of a tree. And when we got up to find the ball, his ball was actually in temporary water in between these two roots. And it was clearly unreasonable for him to hit a shot whether there was temporary water there or not. And so he wasn't granted relief. It would be the same thing here. If his ball was embedded in that same situation, he would not be entitled to free relief, and he would have to proceed under an unplayable ball option. And then no relief here is permitted when the ball is embedded in sand in a part of the general area that is not cut to fairway height or less.
Just a quick comment on that ball that was in the water in that tree. I was working that tournament and it came across the radio. They needed official on that hole. And I'll say this, that he was not going to get relief, but the player at least gave it a try. He tried to get the official to give him a drop out of it, but obviously he didn't get it. Okay, penalty areas. This is rule 17. We have the options. You always can play the ball as it lies. You can always take stroke and distance relief. You can take that anywhere. You can always do stroke and distance. We have back on line relief and lateral relief for a red penalty area only. And there's no relief for abnormal course conditions, embedded balls, unplayable balls, etc., that are in a penalty area. I need my next slide there. Okay, red penalty area options. Again, play the ball as it lies. You get lateral relief 2 club lengths from spot it last crossed. This is only for red. So wherever it last crossed, you can drop the ball within 2 club lengths. You can also do back on line relief. It's not real common to be able to do a back on line relief with a red penalty area because they're usually lateral to the hole being played, but we do see that more and more areas marked red. And the stroke and distance play from the previous spot. Yellow penalty area options are play the ball as it lies, again, back on line relief, stroke and distance. Guys, I see this a lot in our tournaments. I see players put a ball in a yellow penalty area, and the first thing they do, they get up to where it last crossed, and they got that driver out measuring 2 club lengths. Well, that's not permitted for a yellow. Let's go to the next one, please. Okay, here's some examples for the yellow penalty area. You can see from the player hits the ball from number 1, knocks it into the penalty area. X marks the spot where it last crossed. So he can go back on line relief to where number 2 is and go back that direction as far as he or she wants. And number 1 would be, you go back there for stroke and distance. And for a red penalty area, X again marks the spot where it last crossed. Stroke and distance. The reference point is going to be 2 club lengths from where that ball last crossed, no closer to the hole. And you see where his relief area is, and you can drop anywhere in that sort of like pie-shaped or half a pie-shaped. When you guys play in the tournaments, pay attention, because sometimes we put the local rule in effect where you can go to the opposite on a red penalty area, go to the opposite side, equal distance of the hole, and drop within 2 club lengths. I don't think we do that a lot with the junior Zach, right? But it could come in effect sometimes. And the other thing I'll mention to you, since I'm sure a lot of players not sure what to do at times, we play some golf courses that aren't marked very well. And when we go out and they're not really identifiable whether they're yellow or red, they'll tell you on the first tee that we're going to play all penalty areas as red penalty areas that day. And if there's no lines or stakes out there, we go by the fall line, or where the ground sort of drops down into the penalty area. And there, if you're not really sure, holler for one of the officials. There's usually one of us running around somewhere.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So I think the biggest thing, with the difference in red and yellow. So yeah, red penalty area, you guys can take lateral relief, which is 2 club length from last point that across the penalty area. So with the yellow penalty area, this is usually things that are more in front of the green or creek that's crossing the fairway. So you do not get 2 club length relief in that. You can take the other options back on the line relief, stroke and distance, go back from where you previously played from. But the biggest thing is that red penalty area, you can take 2 club lengths, lateral relief. Yellow penalty areas, you cannot. You have the other 2 options. You can play the ball in a penalty area at all times with no penalty. You can always have that option. But if you do use one of the relief options to get out of the penalty area, it's going to be 1 penalty stroke. All right, well, that pretty much sums up kind of our PowerPoint presentation here, but I just want to take a quick moment just to talk about some of the resources that we have. So the first thing is we created a rules exam this year. And anyone who takes the exam, we are doing a bunch of different giveaways. So right now we're giving out a free dozen PJT branded Pro V1 golf balls. So if you take the exam, you will be entered in to win one of those raffles, and then we'll bring the balls to one of the events you're at. To take the rules exam, it's super simple. If you're logged into your Golf Genius profile, I attached a screenshot here. When you're logged in, you see on the top right where it says rules exam. You simply just click that, and you're able to take the exam as many times as you would like to. I believe it's only 12 questions. A lot of the questions on there are stuff that we covered today, so it would be great practice. After we hang up here to go take that exam and see how you did. It should tell you all the answers as well, which ones you got right and wrong. But really encouraging to take the rules exam this year. It's really important for all the players to understand the rules. There's a lot of different rules out there, but the basic ones, kind of like we covered today with penalty areas and out of bounds, a lot of those are kind of on this exam. So most common stuff that you guys experience. Other resources that we have on the rules of golf. So I attached a screenshot of our website here. So on the top of our website, if you go all the way to the right and hover over education, you will see rules of golf. And so that'll take you to this page. So we abide by the USGA rules of golf. So the first link there is just strictly the clarifications and the definitions of all the rules of golf in there. There's also videos explaining different rules of golf. And there's different courses that you can take to access the rules of golf as well. And there's also some short quizzes. They have 10 question quizzes, 25 question quizzes in there. Super simple to take. And then, I just want to say too, we'll also attach the recording of the seminar in here. So if you guys want to come back, watch over any of the rules that we cover here today, we will put that recording on our website as well. And then the last thing I kind of wanted to mention was to download the USGA Rules of Golf app. So they made this app, I think, recently, a couple of years ago, but the app is really, really improved over the years. It's super user-friendly. They even have a search function where you can go in there, search up a rule, and it'll take you right to that rule. So I highly recommend downloading the USGA Rules of Golf app on your phone. I have it myself, and I do the rule of the day every day. Fun little thing that I do. They have a different rule every single day. So I go on there and do that and try to learn more about the rules myself. So I just want to give you guys those resources that are on our website. So, please check out the Rules of Golf page. Try to get more and more friendly with the rules of golf. I did see someone in the chat said they already took the exam and it says they won't take them again. I'll follow up with you in regards to that, and we'll get you all squared away. But other than that, we will kind of open it up the floor to anyone. So if you have a question, if you would just raise your hand. If you guys have anything specific for myself, Mark, or Ben, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat. Let's see if we have any questions.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Some of the questions I had were interesting. You kind of already alluded to them. The Philly Junior Tour event at Seaview, not weekend, the weekend before, there was a boy in my son's foursome who aimed at the wrong green, was on the green, and he was attempting to play it off the green. And I, as a spectator, ran out and said, "You may not want to do that." And then I kind of reminded myself, not a spectator, I can't tell you what to do. I don't want you to get DQ'd by my advice. So I just said I shouldn't have said anything. But it is interesting that if it does happen, automatic relief on a wrong green.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Yep. Say. Oh, go ahead.
The other one where you got relief, I think from a cart path or something, you have to use your intended club to hit as a way of measuring where you would drop. However,
you use the intended club to determine your nearest point of relief. Let's say that where that cart path was and the ball was lying, that you would have hit a pitching wedge if there was no cart path there. So you take your stance with the pitching wedge, ground the club, and whichever side of that path is closest to where your ball lied on the path, that's your nearest point.
After
so you
that,
put a tee there, and then you drop within a club length of that spot.
So the second part of that, within a club length of that spot, is that still the intended club, or could that be any club in your bag, like the longest club, like the driver?
Any club.
Any club. Okay.
And you don't have to hit the club that you would have hit from the cart path. You could hit something else.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So yeah, I'm 49. I grew up with potentially an old set of rules. If you couldn't find a ball, it's within bounds, but you couldn't find it, you'd have to go re-tee. I've heard that there might be some new rule that you, in a tournament especially, to keep pace of play potentially, you don't go back and hit a new ball. You think where it might be and you take a 2-stroke penalty or something. I'm just putting it out there. I've heard these rumors. I'm not sure what in a tournament, what it's in bounds and you can't find it. What do you do?
Yes.
You want to do that, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, you guys aren't using the local rules, Zach, correct? So
No.
the only option would be to proceed under stroke and distance and return to the spot of the previous stroke. There, if you want to do a little research, there is a local rule that might be adopted by some facilities that does provide relief along the lines of what you're saying, but just not to confuse everybody, I'm not going to go into it, but there is a local rule that you can research on relief for a ball that's lost or out of bounds that is along the lines of what you're describing.
On the notice to competitors sheet, they usually always put on there that the local rule for a lost ball or out of bounds ball is not in effect. Because we've had in the past where junior players at the clubs they play golf at on a regular basis have that rule in effect, and then next thing you know, we're watching some player dropping a ball up where a ball went out of bounds and playing, and we end up having to penalize them and correct them. So that's definitely on the local rule sheet or on our notice to competitors that it's not in effect.
Okay,
Right, Zach?
great.
Yeah, correct. I was just say that there might be, some other tours or high school golf that maybe use that local rule. But yeah, for the Philadelphia Junior Tour, yeah, that local rule is not in effect. So yeah, if you hit your ball and it's inbounds and you cannot find it, that's considered a lost ball. So you'd have to go back to the last spot you played it from. That's how we abide by the other USGA rules golf. We don't have that local rule in effect. So the Philadelphia Junior Tour, you must play or you must do stroke and distance.
Okay. I'll read my notes here. Sorry, give me 1 second. This is just a personal thing that happened to me in a GAP match about 25 years ago, and I never got a ruling on it. I marked my ball with a penny. It was rainy, heavy rain. I tried to tap it down with my putter, and from the friction or whatever, the marker got lifted up and moved. What would you, I just want to make sure that if it happens again when my son plays Philly Junior Tour, what would that rule be? You put it down to where you think it most reasonably was? So do you want to take it, Mark?
Yep, there's there's no penalty, and he's going to replace that marker. And if he's not exactly sure exactly where it was, he'll estimate where it is. But yeah,
Okay.
there's no penalty.
Great, thank you. That was it. Thank you very much.
Sweet. I saw we had a question in the chat here, so I'll read it out. So if you were to hit the green from 150 yards out, let's say you're on the fairway, your ball is on the green, you don't get a chance to mark your ball before the next person hits, and then they hit your ball on the green and your ball goes off the green. Do you play the ball where the ball moved off the green, or do you replace the ball where you think your ball landed on the green? I believe I know the answer to this, but Ben, you want to touch up on this?
Sure. Yeah. So if the ball, so there was a ball that was hit onto the green, and then another player's ball hit that ball, and deflected the ball. So the ball that was, on the green that was there originally would be replaced. And if you don't know that spot, you would estimate it as near as possible. The ball that hit the other ball and was deflected, the ball that was hit from the fairway that hit the ball on the green, that ball would be played as it lies.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so if you were to hit your ball to answer your question, and your ball's on the green, someone else hits their ball, they hit your ball on the green, they would play their ball as it lies, as it was deflected, but then you would get to replace your ball on that spot. That was a good question.
And that would be no matter, even if it wasn't on the green, if it was somewhere else, if that ball is moved by the outside influence, you replace it. And one thing I always tell everyone, think of it this way: if you're replacing a ball, you get to place it. So it's not a drop. You always get to replace it when you're replacing.
Any other questions?
Sorry, I did have one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought, I've been doing Philly Junior Tour for like 4 years now. I thought there used to be a phone number or something the kids could call if they had a rules question, because I know a lot of times when you walk with them, they're really not sure, and I'm just a spectator. What did there used to be a phone? I know you talked about the 2-ball rule, but was there a number they could call or a resource?
Yeah, we do have a number that you can call, which we'll call the tournament director who's on site that day. So I don't know it off the top of my head, but I'll send you an email of it once we get off this call. I can send you that number over. But yeah, typically, the best way is to try to find a rules official. If you can't, you do have that 2-ball option. But yeah, Chris, I can get you that phone number.
That'd be great if you get it to me, but because it happened 2 years ago at Seaview, we couldn't find a rules official. Is that something that maybe on the first tee the players could be informed about?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a great point. So I definitely think we could. Yeah, I do think, obviously we have that. And if not, you can't find a rules official. They do have the option to play 2 balls, which is kind of why we went over it today, just to make sure, if you don't know the new situation, you can't find an official, maybe we're not answering the phone, like the last resort, you can play 2 balls under that rule.
Great, thank you.
Yep. We have any other questions at all? Give a couple seconds here. All right. Well, thank you guys for all joining today. If you guys do have any specific questions, feel free to shoot us an email. We can help you guys out. I hope you guys do take advantage of the resources that we have on our website. Hopefully you guys can learn a little about rules, but hopefully you guys took away a little bit something from this presentation. I know it was a little bit shorter. There's a lot of rules that we could have covered. There's a whole lot of complex situations, but this was kind of the most common stuff that players experience during tournament play. So I just want to thank Mark and Ben for taking their time today as well to jump on this call and educate you guys a little more on the rules. But Mark and Ben, unless you guys have anything else, I think that's pretty much it from me.
Nope, we're good. Thank you.
No, have a great season, everybody. Thanks for joining in.
All right, sweet. All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. And I will we'll send out the recording tomorrow, and we'll get it on our website as well. So thank you guys for joining. Appreciate it.
All right, Ben, I'll see you down the road somewhere.
All right, Mark. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Zach.